Welcome to RPG Reanimators, a podcast for GMs where we dissect horror scenarios and campaigns and offer our experiences and advice to reanimate them at the table. I'm Lex.
I'm Nathan.
I'm Alex.
I'm Holly.
So let's see what's on the slab. This episode marks the beginning of our dissection of the award-winning Delta Green campaign Impossible Landscapes, written by Dennis Detwiller. In this campaign, agents have their entire understanding of the world shattered before discovering that the only way out is through. Because of the intertwined mysteries in this campaign, all discussions past this point will have massive game-ending spoilers. This is one of our favorite campaigns, so please, if you have not played Impossible Landscapes, stop here. I cannot emphasize this enough. And share this episode with your GM so that they can listen to the tale of the King in Yellow and consider running this for your group. Now, let's begin our dissection. Normally, we would start with a thorough summary of a scenario, but in this case, IL has such a lengthy and convoluted plot that we are going to assume that you, dear listeners, have read or are aware of the overarching plot of the campaign. We're going to give a brief TLDR summary here, which you can skip over to right around 7 minutes. If you're not interested, although if you would like a more detailed read-through of the book itself as written, Bud's RPG Review, rest in peace, made an excellent summary on YouTube that would be very useful to watch before coming back into this discussion. Now, who would like to kick us off with the tale of Impossible Landscapes?
I'll give us a start. The core of Impossible Landscapes is the King in Yellow, a corruptive mimetic virus that acts to convert our world into the world of Carcosa. You may have heard of it, a war-torn land on the verge of a disastrous revelation. Or perhaps the world is just a byproduct of Carcosa, and the agents are uncovering the truth behind the shared delusion of, quote-unquote, reality. Ooh. During the course of the campaign, agents will grapple with the king as they're drawn further into the web of Carcosa as it corrupts not just their life, but that of those around them.
The campaign is split into 4 parts with 3 excellent sections that serve as side missions or flexible locations. Night Floors, Volume of Secret Faces, Like a Map Made of Skin, and End of the World of the End serve as the main portions with the bookshop, the missing room, and Hotel Brothel Bin as excellents.
In Night Floors, agents investigate the disappearance of artist Abigail Wright from the McAllister building. This eventually leads the agents into the titular Night Floors, a dimension corrupted by the King in Yellow, where they'll encounter time-spanning experiences from the entire campaign's backstory and future. Once they escape, the agents have to decide how to deal with the corrupted building and residents. Abigail Wright is not found.
The bookshop, excellent.
Gesundheit.
Yeah,
I fucking hate that word.
I'm far too Midwestern for this nonsense.
Excellent. Yeah.
Exeunt, I think.
The-
I looked up a pronunciation thing. I say exeunt. I like just sneeze every time. Exeunt. And then we talk about the bookshop.
The bookshop's side chapter contains the origin of Abigail's delve into the Book of the King in Yellow and serves as a floating clue repository that works well anywhere within the first 3 scenarios of the campaign and introduces us to a very fun NPC with 3 first names.
In Volume of Secret Faces, the agents regroup after 20 years to investigate the disappearance of patients from the Dorchester House psychiatric facility. Little do they know that their handler and the house itself have been corrupted by the King in Yellow, eventually culminating in the agents being held as patients in the mind-bending halls of the house at night. With the help of the enigmatic Mr. Wilde and demonic hosts, the agents flee the house, chased by a clown avatar of the King in Yellow.
During the Volume of Secret Faces, agents may encounter the Missing Room, a hotel room inhabited by an ill-fated Delta Green team before them. This room is a treasure trove of artifacts and weird encounters that give clues to the origin of Delta Green's involvement with the King in Yellow.
Like a Map Made of Skin follows immediately after the escape as agents flee from the Dorchester house. The agents are now pursued by Delta Green, authorities, and eventually Static Protocol, a kill team of King in Yellow consumed Delta Green agents. This chapter is one of the shortest, as it's primarily combined with the following: the Hotel Brothel Bin, a location that the agents can only reach after being chased by the Static Protocol.
The Hotel Brothel Bin is a moment of rest for the agents as they recover from their wounds before delving beneath the hotel into the Whisper Labyrinth, a location that may hold bottles containing the core essence of an agent. Once the agents find the bottle of J.C. Lynn's, the future/past author of The King in Yellow, the path opens to the final scenario in the campaign. I would argue this is not an exuent. This is just the required section. So
Yeah, it's weird that
What
they're
were they
like, this
thinking?
is a side
What were they
piece.
thinking? I'm
no,
getting
it's
that.
that you have to go here.
Yeah. Finally, the end of the world of the end has the agents arriving in Yatil, a land eternally being consumed by Carcosa. They'll travel through the ruined cities and war zones before finally arriving at the King in Yellow's masquerade party, where they'll meet the elusive Abigail Wright and are tasked with delivering the bottle of J.C. Lynn's. While giving the bottle to JC allows for the creation of the King in Yellow book and the main time loop of the campaign, it also gives the agents their only opportunity to flee the masquerade and survive the campaign.
This summary covers the main gist of each scenario, but there's also extensive history spanning through the 1400s and a vast cast of characters that glide between time periods due to the King in Yellow's influence. The history delves into demonology, cults, and Delta Green cover-ups of King in Yellow incursions. It's far too much for us to cover each individual time period, so while we're doing our best to give context as we go, I'll reiterate, go check out Bud's RPG Reviews that has wonderful in-depth summaries of each chapter.
Or, like read the book. But
Read the book. It is 300 and some odd pages, but it's a very fun read.
And on that note, then, what is it that we really like about this campaign? I do want to kick things off with talking about the book in general, which I do think anyone should read, because Jen McCleary did an amazing job with the layout of that book. It truly was a treat to read through. It felt somewhat House of Leavesy at times, with multiple authors and kind of annotated notes arguing with each other, and certain pages are kind of reversed. It's super, super cool. One of the best presentations that I have seen in a book. What about y'all? What are some of your favorite elements of it?
I love the marginalia, like just the notes from assuming Barbas and then one other person that I never figured out quite who it was.
Oh, it's either Bale or Dallin.
Okay.
I think you might be right, Lex.
Dallin makes a couple of notes. It's mostly Barbas that's in the red text. Then there's Bale that writes, I think, in the blue text. And then there's a couple of other very tiny notes that show up a couple of times in it. Yeah.
Yeah, the marginalia is fun, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fun kind of off of that. It's fun to read all the lore that's in this, right? As we're talking about how this has history through the 1400s, and it's an enjoyable read, and you can bring in as much or as little as you want to your campaign, right? You could deal a ton with demonology in here. I've done that before. Or you can say, that's not really interesting to me, and leave it out, and it's fine.
Sort of in that same vein, something that I think is very unique about this campaign, and one of my favorite aspects of it, is that it is the most plastic campaign that I have read, meaning that it can be formed and morphed around your players and their player characters, their bonds and their choices. So many of the horrors of Carcosa and the Night World are designed to kind of emulate the personalities of the people that are around them. And there are so many NPCs, so many threats, and just weird shit that you as a GM should feel at liberty to incorporate and tweak as needed to really make this abstract campaign tailored to suit your players to a T. I often complain that DG tends to portray bonds as kind of speed bump disruptions to operations. You need to get to your nephew's birthday, so we have to hurry up this mission. Like, it's really annoying. And in this one, you really are encouraged to flesh out those bonds, because they are going to get roped into these machinations of the King in Yellow and Carcosa that emphasizes a kind of helplessness. Your PCs are going to scramble to save their loved ones and find out that they just can't, because by the time they know what's going on, it's already too late.
Yeah, I think it really captures the descent into madness feeling very well. Like, more than any other campaign, I, as a player, felt the paranoia and the anxiety for my own PC. Like, genuinely more than any other campaign I've ever played in. I was like, I feel paranoid. I feel paranoid about this world.
Yeah, every instance, every character in that world, once you start looking into it, you like, it's almost like a vortex, because then you're starting to see like the anagrams, and then you're starting to see, oh,
Yep.
these dates match up, and
Mhm.
it's like you're delving into something that that you know that there's a huge bigger picture for that you don't quite understand. So as a player, when I was playing this campaign, it made me feel like uncomfortable, but in like a good way. It's the good kind of uncomfortable. Like,
Mhm.
it's, I don't know really how to describe it, but the best I can do is it's like a feeling that you've never felt in real life, because you've never been in that situation of having to deal like with unnatural horror. It's a surreal horror. Some of the best moments, I think, that happened when Nathan was running the game for me, was like, how do you explain the feeling of when your handler just says, or when the NPC says, yeah, we know everything you're doing, we read the script. I'm like, huh? That's crazy.
You're saying nothing I do matters? Yeah, it's like it captures the feeling of a conspiracy
Right.
perfectly, because it does have those layers on layers to dig into, where you can at the end of it go, it was all connected. No, and you've got the twine all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really hindsight 2020, the campaign. Like, as soon as the agents step into the McAllister, they are going to just be hit with a barrage of bizarre, weird information. And if you're encouraging your players to take thorough notes, which you really, really should,
Yeah.
they are going to start drawing those lines. Like Alex said, you're going to see weird dates line up. My players are now super paranoid about anything happening on August 30th. So, like, that's a bad day. Bad things happen on that day for some reason, I don't know. And so you can really emphasize a lot of those things, but it also kind of gives you some liberty that, because players are constantly assailed with weird shit, if you mess up, it's fine. Just find some way to tie that in with something later, and your players are going to try to connect a dot, and it'll seem very deliberate the entire time. Like, that's because everything is a plate of spaghetti. You don't have to worry about breaking any walls and things.
Yeah, it's a hard campaign to fuck up, really. And that's, I think, a really good bonus, because as a GM, I'm not always great about dates and names and things like that. And it's like, that's fine.
And I think that that's also, like, the timeline is incredibly thorough in the beginning chapters of the book, but you don't really have to memorize the whole thing. That is very handy to Control F. Like, whenever you are
Yeah.
preparing for a session and you need to say, like, when did that happen? Boop. It is in the timeline, or it's in the, what's it called? The static protocol accessory
Right.
PDF to try and pull those dates up whenever you need. You don't need to memorize everything.
Which, thank goodness, they named it the same as a faction within the game to make it easier to find.
And thank goodness all of the internal hyperlinks work. It's great.
Uh,
Tier.
Yeah, I do. It is a nice bit to, if you have like a subject you're looking for, it grabs everything by that. So it's a little easier to give out bits of clues and information if you have static protocols. So it's a nice addition, but I didn't find it necessary. That's a mini review. I really like in this campaign that it has a lot of memorable NPCs, and we'll be going into them as the chapters go, but like the handler from the second scenario is one of my favorite characters, possibly of any campaign, just as an NPC, because he's so complex and interesting and fun to play. A basically mad demon possessed, quote unquote, Delta Green agent that his motivations are unclear.
As long as he keeps his regular prescription of baby teeth 3 times a
Yeah.
day.
Num num num.
Yeah, in addition to having a ton of great NPCs, this book also is filled to the brim with great evocative handouts and
Yeah.
portraits of most of those NPCs. I'm going to get into a complaint in a little bit, but There are a ton of handouts that you can provide players that have great art that are all within the core book, and then there is a very vibrant GM scene in the Impossible Landscapes Handler Discord server that we'll include a link to in the show notes of this episode. That there are tons of community created handouts for this. I'll be linking some of the handouts that I've made just to try and help out on this too. There's a lot of enthusiasm for this campaign, and I think that it's well placed, and it's just super fun to lean into as much or as little as you want.
I love the NPC portraits because if you like look at them hard enough, you'll see the yellow sign in like most of them, whether it's in the reflections of their eyes or earrings, or like it's a barely covered patch on their backpack, and it's super cool. So many Easter eggs, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely had that second scenario where people are like, "Wait a second, she's wearing weird earrings. What is that? What is that?"
My agents legit almost nuked poor Cynthia because they're like, "Look at those earrings." I'm like, "Hey, it's okay. It's just a thing."
Yeah, especially funny since, as it is, she's not
Very benign,
She's the least sinister person in the chapter.
Yeah, I think that it was just like, "Oh yeah, Miss Wright made me these before she went missing."
Yeah.
Haven't given a second thought.
I like that this is also very different from a lot of other Delta Green scenarios. Like, violence here is minimally useful. The cover up is nigh impossible, but it's not really focused on that, right? It goes back to that. This is about your agents and their bonds. It's pretty focused.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't feel like a Delta Green campaign, quite
Yeah, I was going to
honestly.
say that
Yeah.
my very lukewarm take is that this barely feels like Delta Green. Like, you get the premise to start up the investigation, okay, and after that, your agents are actively punished for continuing to follow the Delta Green protocol, and they will just walk into a killing floor if they try to be good agents. So they are forced to kind of dive deeper into all of this because it's one of the only mechanisms for safety. But honestly, if you're not a huge fan of the Delta Green system, I think this could very easily be rewritten to just be Call of Cthulhu or some other system of choice. Just with a few creative rewrites and finding a way to hook your agents back in after the gap.
I think it does kind of rely on the Delta Green mechanic of you have to do what the agency directs you to do. Like, why would anyone continue into this descent
Right.
into madness if they didn't have some kind of threatening force saying like, no, you have to because this is your job.
I would imagine they have to do it because they're in it now, and it's the only way they can stop. The only way out is through.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, you'd have to really push up. We'll talk about this in reanimation, I suspect. You'd really have to push, like, no, as soon as you touch this, you're in it, dog. Like, there's no way out. You
I don't
gotta
know.
keep going.
I don't want to spoil my current run too much, but Colin is playing a playwright character, and he is literally cheesing the smoking lounge of the night floors to get more writing done. He will go there at night and chill in the smoking lounge and just write on his typewriter for hours on end. And he keeps trying to dip out like before it hooks him in and pulls him deeper. And I don't know how much longer his luck is going to keep up.
At some point, you need the big reveal that everything he's been writing is, I don't know, like all work and no play makes Colin a dull.
So far, he's given Mark Rourke a full biography, as that was one of his first nights there, as Mark wouldn't leave him alone. He was just like, "Oh, you can get an office if you just go in a little bit deeper." And so instead, he's just like, "Why don't you tell me your life story, Mark?"
Oh my god.
Incredible. I would say what else I like about this campaign, besides combat, because you'll be running a lot. There's a little bit for everyone, especially for those that are curious detectives and are willing to put in the time to just like look into things and work with the handler.
Yeah, agreed.
This is a great campaign if you have curious and interested players, because there are so many things that they can tease and dive into. I do agree, though, in terms of combat for this, because this campaign is not dangerous until it is lethal. And there are some things that just cannot be fought, which honestly feels fitting for a cosmic horror kind of system.
I don't know. I feel like, and maybe this is a good transition into like issues that we have with the campaign, but it's like there's so many planks to sanity that like if your players don't start with a really high sanity, it becomes like almost a version of lethal, because it's like my player started with like maybe 60 sanity, and by the end it was not looking too good. It was not looking too good.
Yeah, by the end, though, you can kind of mechanically get away with a 0 sanity character and just be like, we're going to finish this out with them. Yeah, keep playing, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Keep going.
Everything's fine. I'm sure this won't come back
The
to haunt you
boiling
later.
frog in the water, yeah.
It's just at that point, I would just tell the player that, like, you cannot question anything else going forward. Like, you are just full stop committed once you're at 0
doesn't
sand.
matter. You don't even need a character sheet.
Yeah,
just keep
that
going.
That would be super fun, yeah. I do think before we get to the issues, I like the corruption mechanic, a background mechanic that is in there that measures basically how invested you are to the King in Yellow. So the more you engage, the higher it goes. The less you engage, the lower it goes. So I just think that's an interesting mechanic that's very thematic to the King in Yellow. And Alex, I know you've done some interesting tracking methods with that.
Yes. So in my campaign that I ran for my home group, I tracked every single instance of corruption being raised or lowered. And then it was like as you would expect, because there's some segments that just set your corruption to a certain level. So I kind of had to throw it out towards the finale, because like everyone's corrupted for being in this location.
Yeah, I think I'll use this as a transition into issues that I had with the campaign, because while I get the corruption mechanic in theory, it just seemed unnecessarily tedious and numeric in a campaign that is otherwise very abstract, improvisation heavy, and vibes based.
Yep.
It kind of reminded me of Detwiller's writing in Music from a Darkened Room, like adding numeric crunch to something that you need to encourage your GMs just to go with it. Like
save your bandwidth.
Yeah, exactly. Like, truly, I just
things.
keep tally marks next to my player notes whenever I'm taking notes during a session, and we'll just say, like, this player is diving in. So I will give them more stuff next time or just going forward, but I think that you can easily pass with a heuristic there. Are there any other issues that we've had with the campaign, either, like, as written or in running it?
The themes, right? So the main themes of the campaign are helplessness, futility, kind of predestination, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it matches that very well, and that can be completely unsatisfying to the players when they hit the conclusion and go, we were doomed from the start, what's the point? Like, we're never going, like, we never had a chance to quote unquote win. So yeah, your players kind of got to know that going in, like, you're here for the ride, not the destination.
Yeah, you definitely have to reframe it.
Yeah, I was, when I, we'll get into all the reanimation stuff later, but like my exposure to this was as a player. And then when I went to read it, I was like, God, this is a very unsatisfying ending. I understand that Delta Green is very much like the doom and the gloom and the downward spiral, but, some of it is like what makes for an enjoyable experience. Like when you've asked people to invest like months of their time into something.
Right.
I'd even be okay with like sacrifice yourself to end the story or something like that, right? But the conclusion of just like everyone continues to perpetuate the King in Yellow, it just feels like the ending of a book. Like I've just committed my life to playing 6 months of 10 candles. I don't know. It was kind of like meh. Like, okay, I guess like none of this matter. Like everything I've been working toward doesn't matter. All of this investigation I've done doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
I think one thing that you need to make horror work just fundamentally is the idea of hope. Like you hope that you can get out of it. Therefore, you're going through all these horrible things, these trials and tribulations and obstacles. So like the hopelessness versus like the hope, you really need to either get your players in the right mindset and reframe it. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you might be hopeless in this regard of stopping the King in Yellow, but there's other things you can do to be as good as you can be in this situation.
Yeah, I think most of my critiques of the overall campaign are going to be limited to that final chapter. And like, boy, I'm going to roll my sleeves up when we finally get into that episode because it is It's just rough as written. And kind of to your point, Holly, it makes sense in terms of a literary narrative. If this were a short story, then everything that the agents have already done and will do has been written, and nothing that they do actually matters, and camera zooms out, spinning into blackness of hopelessness and despair. But this is a role-playing game, and narratively removing any aspect of agency that the player characters can possibly do is, you just pulled the plug on the entire entertainment. Like, that is remarkably unfun. And I think that GMs should be very cognizant of this whenever they are running, particularly the last chapter, to give the agents at least some mechanism or means to try and keep going. Because otherwise, the last chapter reads like just they're on a treadmill of an extended cutscene until they reach an ending and get dumped off. And I think that this is where a lot of reanimations are going to be taking place. I mean, in addition to throughout the whole campaign.
The ending to me just makes me think of a Goosebumps book where it's like you were dead the whole time, or,
Well,
nothing mattered.
If
Like,
you
okay.
run that last chapter as written, you probably will be dead the whole time because it's so lethal. It's incredibly lethal. And it's made where you can have repeating characters, right? You basically go, oh, I died, but I'm back. Well, then that goes again to that, like, well, what's the point, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe there's a sand loss, but is that still interesting? Is that still, is there enough punch to death once someone comes back? And can you, like, if you do a replacement and you go, okay, here's your new replacement character, tomorrow's the finale. Who cares? Like, hi, I'm Larry. I'm along for the ride. Here we go.
I have long said that if any GM actually lets their fucking player characters get eaten by a sky whale on the way down to the battlefield, they deserve to get their GM card revoked. That is the stupidest fucking way to remove a PC from a campaign right before the ending. Like, why do that to your players? It's just dumb.
What if they fumbled the roll? I have to listen to what the dice says.
Stupid.
It would be pretty fun to have a Jonah and the whale situation, though, where you just have one agent inside a whale on like a little ship going, boy, they're having fun out there.
Okay, fine. If a character gets eaten by a whale, I then demand that they get to pilot that whale from the inside into the palace. And like, I'm here, bitches. Like, you got to do something with it. I hate that part so much.
They can drift with Pinocchio, and they're both doing the same movements at the same time. How dope would that be?
Carcosan rim. But to get back on track in terms of
Carcosa. All right, let's go.
To get a little back on track in terms of limitations or issues that we've had with this campaign, the book has a lot of characters. Some on this call might say too many. And also, almost all of them have portraits, even some very minor ones in the Dorchester house that may never actually come up or say anything. However, I say almost very deliberately because there are several key NPCs that I think are intended to be like replacement pre-gens, like Michael Whitwer, who have no character art. And this kind of violates an assumption that players will make whenever you're playing any kind of TTRPG. If I mention an NPC and then drop a picture in chat, that means they are an important NPC. If I mention an NPC and they don't have an associated picture, then players might then mean they're probably less important than the one that actually had art commissioned for them, which is not the case in this campaign. So it's just, it leads to a weird imbalance in execution.
I really want to see people use the Thomas Wright picture that is there with the scratched out eyes and just be like, here, this is my character now.
This is me.
What's that clown arm doing grabbing your shoulder there, dog?
It's like a light stroking.
Yeah, he's already had a breaking point, and so that's out of the corner of his eye. He always sees the clown glove over his left
Ugh.
shoulder.
Jesus Christ. No, speaking as the person who's only played this and not run it, there are so many NPCs, and
Yeah.
it becomes a little bit overwhelming to keep track of them from the player perspective of like, oh my God, what was that person? Who is that person again? That name sounds familiar. Jesus Christ, who is this? There's two guys named Ed. What is happening?
Which Ed is it?
There is a lot, and I would say it's neither a pro nor a con that there's a lot, right? Because one, there's a lot of content. Two, you got to go through the content. So I felt like I just had, when I was running the campaign, I just had to deconstruct it into parts, into the essence, and use what the players were interested in.
Yeah, and don't bring up names that they're never going to interact with again, maybe, right? Like, or if you introduce names and they never go back, just drop them. Like, Top Chick is a very easy, like, that's a name. He can come up.
Oh, I love Gary
you could
Chopchick. He's fun.
See,
He's
that's
the
just
king
it,
of
though.
NPC.
Yeah, he's the king of NPC, but you could drop him and be fine. It goes back to what
Yeah, for
Holly
sure.
said, right? Is you can't really fuck it up. Is if you completely drop a character, like you can drop Mosby, who is Delta Green's introduction to this. He doesn't matter. You can drop him and the whole campaign works just fine.
There's so much content that you just have to be okay with missing content.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes in this campaign especially, you need to kill your darlings. Whenever I conduct a session 0 for this campaign, which we'll get to in just a little bit here, but I tell players that there are more leads in this campaign than you can realistically follow up on. So to pick the things that are most interesting to you, pick the people who are most interesting to you, and I will feature them more as time goes on. But there are so many names and so many people. And like to Holly's point from the first time that I ran this, she was saying that as a player, she had very little idea of how to tell who was important and who was not. And so it's just a shitload of names, and then you just kind of have to place your bets on, all right, is this DeCraig guy actually going to show up anymore outside the first chapter? Probably not.
Yeah, I think that also this is not really a weakness to the campaign because, you know, in an ideal world, you meet on a regular basis, but we also know like the real world and you know, the real world versus the ideal world almost never meet. And this is not a campaign to be with a group of people that can't meet consistently.
Yeah.
Like, it's not really weakness. It's just like something to note. It's like we had so many gaps when I played, and that was part of the contribution to the confusion about NPCs. It's like we would go a month without playing, and it was like none of these names mattered to me anymore. And I was like, I don't understand. I've heard this name. I know I've heard this name.
Yeah.
One final note about NPCs, though, is we talk about that there are a lot of names in NPCs, but another big critique that I have for this campaign is that there are very few female NPCs in this game that have any significant narrative gravitas that also are not written as antagonistic or villains. This was something that I deliberately wanted to change in my run. I really thought that Emmeline Fitzroy was a very interesting character, so I kind of latched onto her and developed her into a more pivotal, sympathetic NPC role who the PCs will befriend in the Night Floors chapters, assuming they don't dropkick her or something, and then come back to later on that can act as sort of a guide in the Broadalbin region whenever PCs may start feeling very lost in terms of what is actually going on. And also, I just made Van Fitz a regular person. Like, she's a feminist was such a weird kind of like negative snakebite trait in this. It just felt a little odd to read.
Yeah, rereading through it recently, I think I definitely had a more, like, I think it's more balanced than I initially thought with that, which I'm glad. But I do think there's opportunities to bring in Cynthia LaChance. She's a really good character from the first episode. She owns the building that all the artists are dealing with. Why not, bring her up again later? She's a fun source of information. She's got family ties to Asa Darabandi, and the I believe it's the Lundeen heir is another fun relation for them all. So I've used her before as a kind of contact point, right, where you're bringing in more of these characters that are important and present, because you have like Abigail. She's important, but she's not technically really present except as being mentioned. So yeah, I agree with, it's nice to have a little bit more mix in there.
I think as far as some of the other weaknesses that we've been talking about, getting the players to the Dorchester at night feels very railroady. You're just told as a GM to do whatever possible to force that. And we can get into this when we talk about Volume of Secret Faces, but I don't love that. And then like reading the Broadalbend, like as a player, this is a super important place and you keep seeking it. And it's at some point you're like, what am I doing wrong? That I kept thinking that. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Because this place seems super important and I can't ever figure out how to get there. And it's in the end, you're just kind of railroaded into it.
Yeah, you can't get to it until you're shoved into it.
It's not obvious to your players, right?
Yeah.
And so you might have them chasing, like, how the fuck do I find this hotel? And they're not really meant to find the hotel. Not really.
Right. We'll definitely have to talk about that, because I have some thoughts about making that more player driven rather than just they sit around until something happens to them, which isn't very interesting from a player side.
Yeah, the campaign just has a couple of really severe bottlenecks in terms of the Dorchester and then to the Broadalbend. It seems to kind of flow from open to closed to open to closed and then railroad after that. But I think that bottlenecks in particular can be challenging for GMs to really find ways to guide your players there without them feeling shunted, because that feeling of shunting is what immediately snaps my immersion out and I start to get kind of frustrated at the table. So trying to find ways to at least let your players feel like they're contributing things. Maybe even something as simple like I should have done for Holly's run of it is, as they are searching, they find a room key to the Broadalbend. Once they have that, that's when the static, like they truly pick up the key, boom, static kicks down the door. So it just feels like I needed to do something to prepare myself for this moment, as opposed to it just feeling very arbitrary and weird.
I would say another issue I have is if you have the wrong group of players, they can probably experience bleed from all the paranoia and potential PvP that this campaign has.
Yeah, especially near the end, I completely agree. Is you're probably going to have players fighting with each other, and just they have to make choices, and they'll sometimes split up, but sometimes the way they want to deal with the ending is completely different. And yeah, you'll have to kind of navigate that.
Mm-hmm. Like it's not conducive to like a unified front if everyone's
right
has a different goal.
And maybe it just comes down to a meltdown at the end of things. I think that GMs really should be prepared for PvP in that final chapter at the Masquerade Ball. That there certainly would be ways to make that exciting, and I don't think you're going to find them within the text of the book. It's going to take a lot of reflection and preparation.
Yeah, and I'd probably say for a lot of the rest of the campaign is if players are drifting apart in terms of how they want to deal with stuff, at some point you got to be like, guys, you're in it together. You got to pick one thing and do it. Because if you have one group that's like, we're never going in there again, and another that says, I want to go in there right now, you just get so split up that it's impossible to balance the two.
Or you have people who really want to role play that they're getting corrupted, and then the other agent's like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. I guess I'm going to shoot you. Well, okay, but we're, 3 from the end, so let's chill out now.
So now that we've listed some pros and cons of Impossible Landscapes, what do we think is the real beating heart of this campaign?
I mean, surreal horror, right? There's this other world, this other set of logic and understanding and corruption that is outside of our time, that has such a huge impact on us that we're completely unable to understand it, and it may even prove our reality wrong. And that's terrifying of its own, to just think like everything we've been doing is the real madness.
I would also say to that too that personal horror is
Yeah.
a really prevalent theme in this campaign. I mentioned it a bit earlier talking about the bonds, but truly not only are you affected, but you can see those that you care about are getting caught into this inexorable pull of Carcosa, and there's nothing that you can do to stop it. You look batshit crazy trying to tell someone, do not talk to that person, they're a mannequin. And like, you can't do anything about it. And you just keep watching it happen. So you try and fight it, but you just get dragged in deeper. I think that it really captures those themes really well. And you can have some very emotionally horrific scenes in this campaign.
Right. This cosmic horror has existed way before your time, and it will exist way after you. And I think one of the themes is this losing battle with the unnatural over the course of a lifetime because of that 20-year time skip.
And it does a bit too, which I think is very smart for this kind of personal horror, is not everything even needs to be addressed, right? You can have an agent that's seeing mannequins all over the place, and they've just learned to accept it and not mention it and not bring it up. And that's a different kind of terrifying, to just have this person that's experiencing real mental trauma but can't do anything about it.
If you search online for any amount of time, you'll find that people tend to reference IL as a very difficult campaign to run. And I'm curious to bounce this question off of you all. What are your takes on this? What is the relative difficulty of Impossible Landscapes to run as a GM?
I don't know, Lex. Not very hard, but no, I'm just gonna
Next
say
question.
if you are the type of GM that doesn't prep at all, right? That just reads from the book as they're running, you're gonna fail. It's not gonna be a good run. This is a campaign that's really gonna benefit from a little prep and understanding what every faction and element can, how they can affect the players.
Yeah, the level of abstraction in Impossible Landscapes is really unlike any other TTRPG campaign that I've seen. And I fully agree. GMs need to read the book front to back and then back to front again, maybe in front of a mirror, to really get a holistic idea of what's going on, and then start another read through to take notes. You really can't run this one chapter at a time. And like something like Two-Headed Serpent is, you need to have a full understanding and then go at it with the whole enchilada. You can't just take it piecemeal.
Yeah, and I think that's a very clever bit of how it's written, is that it invokes in the GM the same level of conspiracy searching and note taking as the feeling that the campaign is trying to provoke. Now, I do think you can probably get by with reading the main chapters. Like, do you need the whole history? Probably not, right? You could ignore the 1400s and on and on and on, but it's fun. Like, I really enjoyed reading it, and it's fun to look at stuff and go, hey, somebody left a metal bound notebook in the 1400s. That's probably Barbas from the future leaving a literal notebook that has all the demons in it with the guy that invents demonology. And you start to see all these fun parallels. So it's a rewarding read.
Yeah. And on that too, I will say that the timeline of Impossible Landscapes is very complex, full of timey-wimey bullshit, and can seem really daunting if you feel like I have to memorize this entire thing. However, as someone who's run this 1.x times, in execution, it's pretty easy to kind of get the gist of the main plot beats that are interesting to you. Do you need to know that Lady Trifoni first appeared in 1500s in England and predicted a flood? No. If that's something interesting to you, you can make a note of that, add that to your GM notes, and find a way to sprinkle that in. Or you can just have Lady Trifoni not show up at all. Don't do the tarot cards if that's not interesting to you.
Right.
That I think as a GM, you can kind of develop a heuristic timeline of plot beats. And then again, look through the book. The book is there. You can just Control F and drop dates and things in whenever you think it's interesting.
Magnify as needed, right? Because
Yeah.
Lady Trifoni, right? At the end of the day, she's just this weird tarot lady that the players can meet.
But I want to use those fancy cards that I bought. Oh,
Well,
I've
might
done
I
that,
suggest
yep.
having her show up in an earlier chapter? Because it's all timey-wimey.
you can move people from different chapters?
This is some Doctor Who bullshit right here where you're just like, it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter where they are.
I lost track of how many times Holly said timey-wimey in the running of this. She was just like, time doesn't matter, guys. They're just
Flat circle.
everywhere.
Yeah.
We're in the Jeremy Bearimy of it all. It's okay.
Yeah, and you can just also do that with agents. Like, you're like, hey guys, guess what? You're in 1400s France now. You have to deal with this problem. Like, yeah, it's difficult if you worry about being true to exact book stuff, but it's pretty flexible.
And different from the majority of campaigns that are written, I think GMs just need to become comfortable with the idea that your players will never find all of this information. It's not possible.
Yeah.
They will not learn everything. And that's so different from every other campaign that's written, where it's like, we have all these very important plot beats and you must make sure your players find out this information. And, you know, there's different strategies to make sure they do, right? But you don't take that approach to this. There is no way to push that all this information to your players.
Yeah.
So like picking out like, oh, if they don't find out about Lady Trifoni here, I need to move her over here. Like
Yeah, it's really an a la carte menu of surreal weirdness that you can mix and match as needed. And I think it's important for GMs to remain cognizant of this is your player's campaign. You already had fun reading it. You're going to have fun running it, but like keep it focused on what the players are excited about and ways to bring in scares for them. If they don't care about the tarot card lady, don't worry about it. Like, again, doesn't matter. If they do, then she's everywhere. She's predicted everything in your lives. And kind of in a similar vein, too, I think that this is really a campaign that every interested GM should run more than once. Because the first time I ran it, it was a tons of notes. I was constantly switching between documents, trying to keep everything straight. The second time I'm running this, I am barely prepping between sessions because I am now much more confident in how my world works and knowing the major plot beats. So then I can just drop things in as needed. It's a very different experience, and I feel that I'm developing a lot more improv related skills as a result of it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I would almost say that like it's not quite a weakness, but it's like almost a weakness. Like I think that the first run you do of this campaign is always going to be rough because it's so complex and like the web of everything is so crazy and you got to wrap your mind around it. And then the second run, you're like, oh, great, awesome. Like now I know this. But then it's like you're always going to have people who play this as like the first run crew, that like the first pancake, the first child, where it's like, you know, they're not quite getting the full experience of a person who like understands this. And it's like, oh, that's kind of unfortunate. But
I like calling it your first pancake run. It's just like, hey, listen, group, we're going to do this. And then I appreciate y'all.
God bless.
Well, and because it's so flexible, like I've run this 4 times, somewhere in there. And I can come into this and go, I'm going to do something completely different this time. But it's all within that framework, right? Where I'll be like, I want this to be the Asa Darabandi run. He's going to be everywhere, do everything, and kind of lead it down that side. Or maybe I want to deal with the Lundin family more. And like, you can make this your own if you run this multiple times. Each one's pretty different.
Mm-hmm.
It almost feels like potentially, sort of, you could almost run this more than once with the same people and just like magnify different pieces.
It's a new loop.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That said, if you have players that are very anti-weirdness, so this is the Delta Green problem, right? Is if you have players that go in, they go, this is weird, kill everything, shut it down, don't look at this. Are you being weird? Stop it. Cut it out right now. This is not going to be very interesting. Like, they're just kind of going to get to everyone and just go, nope, stop it, shut it down, we don't care. And that's not really the fun of this.
I truly do not mean to throw shade with this comment. I fully agree with what you're saying, Nathan. And I would say for curious listeners, if you want to hear an example of why this is not a good thing, listen to the first couple of episodes of Black Project Gaming's run of Impossible Landscapes. One of the PCs is a Delta Green agent with previous King in Yellow experience and does not interact with anything. He crosses his arms. I'm not looking at anything. I'm not touching anything. I'm not interacting with anything. I'm going to kill Thomas Manuel as soon as the others have left the room. And it's just this weird anti-fun feeling. I think that, they tried for something different, and just in this case, this was a swing and a miss. So really it helps to prime your players to investigate the weirdness. And, you're going to get as much out of this as you put into it in terms of that investigation.
It is tricky, though, because that is kind of the antithesis of what Delta Green is, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, don't dig.
That's probably why they aim for new Delta Green agents.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what it has to be, right? Like, in the beginning. Because I know by the time we hit the Dorchester, my character, I was like, I understand the Delta Green protocol of, like, you have to stop this, and anything exposed to this is corrupted. And now I'm becoming more corrupted, which means I might be, a vector or whatever. And like, they're going to kill me. I can't look into this anymore. I'm going to die. Like, I just need to get out of here. Yeah. So I don't know. It's tricky. It's hard.
And then you find out that the only way out is through.
Yeah.
So in the end, yes, this is a tricky campaign to run, as it needs to be considered a little more holistically than other campaigns. But once you get started, it's not as bad as all that, as long as you remain flexible. Would I recommend this for someone's first Delta Green campaign to run? No, absolutely not. If this is your player's first time with Delta Green, maybe give them a couple of regular operations first so they can see what Delta Green is, and then be confronted with, here is what it is not. I don't know, curious on y'all. Would you give this to your players for their first campaign?
No.
I might, because I think Night Floors, that first scenario, is so strong. But if it was their first campaign, I'd probably do the bit where they suggest having another scenario in between Night Floors
during the gap,
and Volume of Secret Faces, right? And that might be a more traditional Delta Green to just kind of get that vibe in, and then when you're back into it, you kind of get that, like, oh, we never left feeling back. So that's probably what I would do, just to get that kind of punch of not escaping the King in Yellow.
From the perspective of, like, I want players to enjoy this and understand, like, investigation and get through this, I think you could do it easily as, like, someone's first Delta Green game, right? But it's like, if you want people that understand Delta Green, like, understand the concept of the agency and what they do and what they're about, like, if that's something you really want your players to understand, I would definitely pick, like, a different thing to introduce them to it. But there's no reason to say it's impossible for this to be the first game, like the first exposure. It's just like, what do you want your players to understand?
Might be easier if they've played Call of Cthulhu, because, like Lex said, it's barely Delta Green required. Is you could just run this as Call of Cthulhu. So if your players already do that, they like looking into weird stuff, this is perfect.
Yeah, I agree with Nathan and Holly. I would say that, yes, you can run this for new players. Yes, it works. I've run this for new players. I've also ran this for players who are have experience with Delta Green. If you have players who are experienced with Delta Green, it's only going to enhance the game. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And like, we haven't mentioned this, but the Night Floors was, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, originally written to be a Call of Cthulhu scenario.
Yep. It was a Call of Cthulhu, yeah. So, Any GM running IL will develop their own understanding of what Carcosa and the King in Yellow are and how the systems involved actually work behind the proverbial curtain. This will in turn influence the edits and reanimations that they make to customize the campaign to resolve any issues that they have and also to make it more fun for their players. Because of this, we're starting off with this prologue episode with a little bit of a reflexivity statement for how each of us really portray the Carcosan mythos as working within our campaigns. So that way everyone can start off with an understanding of where we're coming from. I want to say off the top that each of these interpretations is as valid as any other. And if you have a different interpretation than what we're going to voice in this discussion, that's also perfectly valid and fine. We hope that at least some of our recommendations will still make sense and vibe with you a little bit afterwards. But otherwise, I hope that this at least fuels some more of your creativity. So, kicking things off, Nathan, how does Carcosa and the King in Yellow work in your universe?
Well, let me tell you, my way is the right way. No, I gotta say, this is so flexible. I love it. So, in my games, the King in Yellow is the mimetic virus, and it is a lie that is coming through telling people that the only truth is Carcosa. The King in Yellow is coming. It creates the world, right? Like, it is this big lie, and it's through the book as well, where it's even telling you, the game master, that this is the truth, right? The King in Yellow is behind everything. That's the infection. That's the meme. That's bringing the players deeper into that corruption of it, right? The more they engage with the King in Yellow, the more they believe that this is reality, the more it can affect them. So it's a really neat sort of like idea of that thought virus. Now, I'm gonna yak for a little bit, and this is, feel free to interrupt. This will have massive spoilers for the Sense of the Sleight of Hand Man, Dennis Detweiler's previous Dreamlands campaign for Call of Cthulhu.
Nathan's spoilers stop around 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 50 seconds in, if you want to skip there now to avoid spoilers for the Sense of the Sleight of Hand Man.
For those that are unaware, the Sense of the Sleight of Hand Man is a Dreamlands campaign where players are heroin addicts that basically their debts come due, and their supplier, a man who is in touch with his Dreamlands half, because people have half waking person, half Dreamlands person, right? Two different sides of the coin. We'll see that later with Dr. Dallin and Mr. Friend, right? These are these addicts, the player characters, are accidentally kind of transported into the Dreamlands, this otherworldly place where intention can direct what happens to them. So we'll see that, right, throughout the campaign, as they call it directed dreaming in this case. In the Impossible Landscapes, that's more actually addressing the world, right, as sanity rolls can actually change things. It is also a very Inception-ish situation where they are initially brought through the Bywindine and Opiate. That brings them into the Dreamlands, right? If they take that again in the Dreamlands, surprise, surprise, they go deeper. They go another layer deeper. So this is the core concepts of the Dreamlands here, right? From there, there's a couple other bits we'll see in Sense of the Sleight of Hand Man that reappear within Impossible Landscapes. There is a city under a lake that is within the underworld, very familiar to a spot we see in The End of the World of the End. There is an oracle, a mechanical oracle that appears as a mannequin on tracks that can answer any question about the world, because it's all supposedly controlled by this machinery.
I do have to ask, does it just say 42?
You'd think that. But no, sadly, it says other boring things like, oh, it's Nyarlathotep's. We'll get to that in a second. It's all
Womp
his
womp.
fault. I know. I'm annoyed by it, which is why I don't make it happen in my game. But that's neither here nor there. If you look at that chapter, you'll pretty much see the Oracle matches the Clockwork Child. Like they really have a similish vibe. Everybody with me on the Dreamland so far. Otherworld, we're dreaming it up. We're swapping bodies. That happens. Everybody's got a ruby gem soul, which we'll see in Dr. Dallin's chest cabinet. He's got a soul ruby, potentially. All of that to say, there's a chapter about Ilikvad, the city of Randolph Carter, dreamer extraordinaire. Oh my god, there's so much. Like, if you look at that campaign, there's literally a section where he'll yak about his history, and you have to roll sanity not to listen and get info dumped more. It's really funny. Because basically, all this stuff happens. He pisses off Nyarlathotep, but escapes. And eventually, he ends up in this Ilikvad, this city that he is in control over. He is basically the king of, and he is keeping it at eternal dusk. He's the Dusk King, and he has a lot of power here. He is extremely powerful, but at night, or when he's kind of away in his temple, Nyarlathotep gets a hold of him, sends the Shantoks after him, and they snatch him up and bring him away. And he's feeding him something called Pazu, Pazu, without the T. This is a golden drug that dulls Randolph's senses, removes his memory, and leaves him searching for meaning, all themes that we'll see throughout. And he even goes so far as to ask Randolph if he has mastered the play. The Pazu that we'll see in Impossible Landscapes seems to be a mix of this Pazu and the Bywandine, that opiate that is used to travel to the Dreamlands. Perhaps that is what Melonia is in this campaign, because it's that same kind of opiate pod drug. So we'll see some parallels there. But the point is, Nyarlathotep is poisoning Randolph Carter with the play, this alien reality changing everything. And if the players don't stop this, in the sense of the sleight of hand man, bad news, guys. It works. Randolph falls to the play, and we see what happens in the end of the world of the end is Randolph appears before his town, who has kind of fallen to this corruption, that empty city, the weird velvet outfits and masquerade. And of course, he does the no mask, no mask. Everybody loses their mind, and somewhere Nyarlathotep goes, hee 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 hee, oh, it's all working out for me, I guess.
As is tradition in Call of Cthulhu.
As is tradition, right? So
I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll see actually the Black Wind that is in Chapter 4. That's classically Nyarlathotep, right? So I think there's some interesting interpretation of why is he fighting with the forces of the King in Yellow. There's some interesting context of then, if we take this to be true, and the agents are going into the night floors, they are probably entering physically the Dreamlands. And when they go to the Dorchester house, they are within the Dreamlands. When they drink the Pazu, bad news, it doesn't get them out, it gets them in. The Patsu is a way to draw them further into the dreaming, to a deeper reality. So, at least from my interpretation, that's a long way to go, is to say that this is a Dreamlands Delta Green campaign, and there is a lot of what is the truth here, right? Is the agents might actually just be in the Dorchester house. They might have gone insane, and they are now dreaming all of this. And I'd say anybody that wants to get deeper into Impossible Landscapes, check out The Sense of the Sleight Hand Man. It's a fun read. I don't know that I would want to run it as a campaign. There's a little bit of It kind of hits some roller coaster bits with a few things, but it's got some cool characters. And there's some things that you look at and you're like, oh, the characters, they end up in the Broadbent Asylum. That sure sounds familiar. And might be a place where Asa Darabandi stays because he's nuts. But he goes, hee, I'm in a hotel, hee, and designing stuff. So, long way to go about this is I do think most of the corruptive mimetic idea of the King in Yellow stays put. Most of this is just maybe interesting backstory to what this campaign might be based on. Any questions on my TED Talk?
And Alex, can you bring us out of the dreamlands and into your interpretations of the King in Yellow in Carcosa?
So I just want to preface this for saying Nathan's wrong. Just like everyone else is going to be wrong.
Honestly, probably.
No, I really love that Dreamlands interpretation. It's very creative, and it definitely required like reading between the lines a lot.
But also, I think, Holly, you'd mentioned this before. The players aren't going to ever find this out.
Right.
This is just like, this is for nerdy historians to sit back and go, oh, look at this, dire Laphatet's behind it all. Whoa! And you don't have to do anything with the Dreamlands if you don't want to.
So if your players thought they were getting a campaign that was free of Nair Lathatep, they were wrong.
Joke's on
Boy,
them.
howdy.
Forget about it.
The true sanity loss. Sorry, Alex. Go on.
So I just run things close to the book and in spirit with the book when I disagree with the book. So I basically have a traditional viewing that the King in Yellow / the Yellow Sign is a mimetic virus, much like Nathan. And it's an idea that
Much
wants
like
to
me.
spread itself.
Yeah, much like
Nathan,
me.
you're an infectious
Much
meme,
like
don't
Nathan's
you know?
idea, yes. So it's an idea that wants to spread itself, and everyone who's touched by this play in any medium, right? So if it's in like a Word document, if it's depicted through pictures, they're going to be infected with this surreal weirdness that allows Carcosa to like leak into the world. Well, what is that? So coincidences start lining up, things turn into like a twisted / corrupted version of themselves. See Static Protocol, right? They were organized to hunt down King in Yellow and destroy it, and now they are pawns of the King in Yellow sent to destroy those that want to destroy it, or maybe even lead them into Carcosa. See the demons, right? It's a wish fulfillment. It's like the monkey's paw version of wish fulfillment. The book all explains this as like, entropy trying to right itself. I don't necessarily agree with that because I think that's the Arc Dream.
Yeah, Hastur, baby.
Yeah, that's the Arc Dream interpretation when they try to separate themselves from the Call of Cthulhu line. But you have so basically you have to be in the right state of mind to be receptive to the play and to the sign. So you have to have your mind already in tune with these forces of the universe, and this happens more to creative types because they have a different way of thinking. So I imagine it more to be almost like a Silent Hill-esque thing where Carcosa, like I said, leaks into the world. You have parts of the world where the barrier is thinner, right? You have the night floors, you got the Dorchester house, the bookshop. And why? What is Carcosa? Why? To get more worshippers, to get more fans. Worshippers of the ingenuity to play, right? That second act. Hell of an act. You got to read it.
Yeah, and that makes sense with like the more people read it, that kind of weakens the spot, and then it kind of builds on itself. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, like I said, my view is very traditional in terms of like the Call of Cthulhu line.
Yeah.
And Holly, how about you?
I think mine is probably the shortest and the lazy GM approach, which is I have never read The King in Yellow. I've never read any of the stories that discuss Carcosa, Hastur. I've never, ever read any of those before in my life. So keep that in mind when you listen to what I say, because it's basically what Nathan and Alex said, this mimetic virus that's...
And Holly's right, and we're wrong.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm always right. Naturally. So, Carcosa's this world that's slowly consuming our reality, absorbing it into its own space, and doing that through the corrupting influence of the play that worms its way into your sanity, takes hold, giving you this obsession that you can't shake. I think that in my mind, we are all susceptible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that like maybe creative types are the ones most likely to perpetuate and propagate. But, even those of us who are not particularly creative or artistic, it's like maybe we're even the most susceptible of all, because it's like it's this passive thing in your life that you don't think about and you accept, and you're just like, it's just that ad on the billboard. It's just that, sign on the subway. You're not even thinking about it, but it like worms its way into you and like puts its hooks into you, and you don't even think about it. Right.
And we're just less able to transmit it because of that lack of
you're not the person painting it or putting on the play or doing the
we
thing.
don't broadcast it. We just kind of it's a sticky note on the back of our shirt,
but we accept it,
and we don't notice it as we walk around it.
Right. Like almost like we're the vectors for it instead of being the person that like propagates. It's like we're the fools that are like putting it out into the universe and not even realizing it, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Side note, the book is free to read online, the original Robert Chambers, and actually holds up really well.
Yeah. It's all on Project Gutenberg. There's a version of the Robert Chambers collected King in Yellow stories that I really recommend that's from 1970, weirdly enough, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. This is the time when I do the Ace Ventura head over the shoulder log monologue incoming, but I view the Carcosan influence as a kind of interdimensional cancer that has its own cognizance and interests and spreads as a kind of infectious meme among denizens of different dimensions as they get advanced enough to appreciate art and the things that it does. So as someone makes something that resembles it, it kind of opens a little bitty gateway into their mind. And then that is how this Carcosan influence can kind of spread if someone happens to vibrate at the right proverbial wavelength. It invades their thoughts and obsessions and motivates them to continue this interest and to make and share more of it as it continues to spread throughout a given world, incorporating more of that world into itself until it is fully consumed and there is nowhere left for it to spread. This is what happened to Yatil and the alternate version of New York that we see with Mr. Wilde and the weird thing that they're all references to the Repairer of Reputations that Robert Chambers wrote as an alternate dystopian history of the world. As Carcosa integrates itself further into a given world/dimension, it becomes more integral to it. The fabric of that reality now depends on that Play-Doh of Carcosa that's glommed onto it. So if you stop the play, that would rip a hole into the very fabric of space and time of that dimensional reality, and then cause it to collapse in just pure entropy. So that's what they're getting at whenever they say that Abigail stopped the play and then the world was falling apart, is you technically could stop Carcosa if you manage to get at the wheel and pull the e-brake, but it would then collapse every dimension that it has been connected to. So because of its own esoteric preferences that are just unknowable, we just know that it is a thing, Carcosa follows its own equally esoteric rules. There is always a play, there is always a king, and there is always a phantom and an author. The king, phantom, and author together constitute a kind of holy trinity, or I guess unholy trinity, of Carcosan influence, and then act as its vessel to spread itself among new candidate worlds, as people from those worlds are put into these roles to then spread it further within their dimension. The king has absolute power within the night world and the realms of Carcosa. However, their actions and will are not their own. They are dictated by the author, who writes the play and fuels the overall progress and development of its world after they're already kind of hooked on this King in Yellow narrative. Lots of people think that they can write the play, that they did write the play, but only one is ever able to say that they do write it. However, as we know, all authors are hacks, and their inspiration is guided by the Phantom of Truth. This is a figure who has the greatest meta knowledge of how all of this works, how the night world is a meta world on top of their own dimension, and manages to make just the right nudges to the author and various actors in this great cosmic play to make everything happen. So in that kind of Holy Trinity essence, these figures are all essential and balance each other out in some way. The king has the most power, but the least knowledge and agency. The author has some indirect power and limited knowledge of scope, and the phantom has the most knowledge and the least actual power. So, as each of these roles are integral for Carcosa to continue existing and can be played by various actors, these are the denizens of affected worlds who speed up that world's consumption. So, whenever there is a change of casting, so too does the yellow sign change if someone new is a king and an author. This can explain how you have the curly dragon sign and then the curious A-shaped sign of Impossible Landscapes. I view the overall events of IL as centering on Abigail trying to facilitate a new change in casting. Before this campaign started, she gained the awareness of a Phantom of Truth and tried to take down the king as documented in A World Without Doors. But then, once she usurped the king, the world around her started breaking, and she took on the mantle of king for herself. Anyone can become the king in each iteration. However, it hurts. It's painful. You have this desiccated, charred corpse of a body underneath these tattered robes. And in IL, she wants to go back to being the Phantom by having someone else take on the role as king and coaxing the agents to have J.C. Lenz be the new author, because he's a schmucky drug addict that Abigail can easily control and nudge. So he's kind of a dupe that she wants in this role, and everything will be perfectly fine for her and her ideal world. However, this casting change has created an instability in the overall power structure that other figures, like Mr. Wilde, may wish to take advantage of. So I took some inspiration from Nathan and had a kind of faction play at work where the agents are pawns at the center of a very large faction dynamic spanning time and space and indeed realities. So zooming out overall then, instead of having all of the agency ripped away from agents at the very end, the agents can sort of be aware of this overall functioning of this meta universe and choose to try and steer the car crash by siding with different actors for each role. Or they can choose to end it all and destroy literally our entire world and others in the process.
Yeah, I like that interpretation a lot of the different roles and that they have changed through the past. I think that leads a lot of understanding to players' actions, or not players, sorry, NPCs' actions. For example, Asa Darabandi, right? Like he is killing people that could have been the king, could have been phantoms, and right, if you subscribe to the Dreamland side, maybe they were going to be powerful dreamers someday, because time is here and there, right? And I think too, beyond just the weird dragon to the A, I think, at least in my interpretation, I think the demonology side of things is probably a previous iteration of the King in Yellow, where Person's seal is the symbol that is bringing people in, right? As they are getting into demonology, they are corrupting them. The author in this case is one of the Castains, and the Phantom is probably no longer present, right? It might have been his wife that fell out of a door, all kinds of other interesting options. But I really like the idea of giving players the opportunity to involve themselves in the struggle for control, because all of a sudden it's not just completely pointless. They're just maybe awash in forces that are beyond them.
Yeah, I think that having players confront that you cannot stop this without killing literally everyone.
Mhm.
And so, are you going to be complicit in continuing this? What steps do you want to take to try and direct that propagation? So, with my edits, Emmeline Fitzroy is kind of the shoe-in good, air quotes, ending, who would then, in her iteration as an author, she has the potential to be an author or a phantom. But as an author, she would make the yellow sign as something of a dark secret to be kept. It's some kind of a deep conspiracy and not something to be lauded and shared as something more profane. And so that's where, like, she may limit the spread, but the agents would just know it's going to grow. It always grows. You can just choose how aggressive you want that to happen.
Love it.
Yeah, now that you're talking about controlling the King in Yellow, controlling the narrative as being an author, I would just like to add on to my segment where it's like, personally, in my view, I don't think you can control it. I think humanity or humans trying to control this cosmic level entity or
Yeah.
thing or idea, it's all fallacy. And like, while you might believe you have the idea that you can control it, you're not actually in control. It's gonna
Yeah.
monkey's paw you.
Just getting
Yeah.
puppeteered the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because that is the king, right? He is this extremely powerful entity, but he doesn't really seem to run things exactly.
Right.
Like, he moves like a force of nature,
Mm-hmm.
but has no real kind of mind of his own. It is up to that phantom, the Abigails, the Emmeline's, potentially.
Right. He doesn't have any spoken lines.
Right.
But like, to try and control the King in Yellow is the same as me saying, "Oh well, we're gonna try and control Cthulhu," which don't.
But if I get my bottle, maybe I can.
Maybe, and then yeah.
Yeah, I like that too. Of exactly as we'll talk more about this, is making it so it's not JC's bottle, it's the author. You can kind of play around and make it a little more obvious that maybe the players can take on a role in that. And yeah, I like, Alex, what you're saying exactly, is they have to understand that they might start with good intentions, but they'll know this is going to kill them and probably kill everyone that they know, because they have no way to stop themselves
Right.
from dragging everything in with
Could
them.
end the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, let's say that you've read the campaign and done some reflection on how you understand and want this overarching world and mythos to work. What practical advice would we have to prepare folks to run IL? Let's start with a pre-session zero, a session -1, if you will. What advice would you have kind of in someone in the preparation or contemplation phase?
Read the book. Read the book. You gotta read the book. I mean, there's a lot there that's fun, but not just from a get a handle on what the whole campaign structure is, but get yourself hyped. Like, really get your enthusiasm up, because it is a campaign. You're going to need to have that enthusiasm move through the whole time. You're going to need players to get hyped from you. So, yeah, find out what makes you enthused about this, or you might read it and go, this ain't for me. So, the best solution? Read the book.
Yeah, read the book, and anything that really sparks your imagination as you're reading the book, take a note. Have a notepad, have a Word document, have whatever available, and just write down what you want to delve deeper into.
And also, in terms of having a notebook while you're reading, something that I strongly recommend is before even getting your players involved with a session 0, it's going to be extremely helpful to have all of your notes in order so that you can then identify ways to link those characters deeper into the campaign and into the world as they go on. You can just feel free to improvise a lot of hooks as you get going, but I find that if something really sparks your attention at that session 0, you can seed that into your GM notes for later, so you may not miss it. In terms of my prep for this campaign, I did a series of 5 Google Docs with hyperlinks to each other, a doc for each chapter, and then one overall Impossible Landscapes notes that had more character NPC details. That way I could sort of bounce between them a lot easier, especially whenever you're getting into like a map made of skin. You're going to need to refer back to volume very often. So yeah, whatever would work best for you there.
Google Docs. Yep. Completely agree. That's what I use. Write everything down under player stuff. You can put the separate header levels so you can just click around real fast. Yeah,
the outline feature in Google Docs is so handy.
Very nice.
Personally, I had a Google Doc for each chapter plus an additional Google Doc for the specific notes I had on the PC that I would just augment to the game, and then like using Control F. Oh my god, thank God for Control F.
It is truly a godsend. And also, it may not be a bad idea to kind of copy paste some sections from the static protocol accessory PDF if you have it, because the PDFs are not always the easiest to Control F, and it can just be a pain sometimes. So also having maybe a reserve section for just book notes that you can quickly search in an easy fashion might be helpful. Kind of expanding on this too, we mentioned earlier that IL has a ton of handouts, not only from the book itself, but from the excellent community created handouts that you can find in various places on the interwebs. This can get very complicated if you also want to go the extra mile and do live sound effects, which I don't know why anyone would be so insane to try and do that into their runs. What an idiot. But in terms of just advice for handouts, if you're a type A person like me, I love folders and subfolders. I had a dedicated handouts folder with subfolders for audio-based handouts like Henry Samagina's recorder messages, books, environments that would be just kind of images showcasing locations like the bookshop and Trivellino Mall to help set vibes for players. A folder that has all of the full numbered IL book handouts as a fallback in case I needed something. Then the King in Yellow Tarot deck, player-friendly maps, because you don't need those as a GM. The players need them. Yep. And NPCs, papers and scraps, and website-based handouts. And even these did not cover everything that shows up in this campaign. So, like, if you run this without any kind of organization and prep, you're going to have several moments of, oh, shit, hang on. It looks like, hang on. And I hate those. I die. Like every second lasts a millennium in those moments. So, yeah.
I think everyone here has run this online. And I'm curious, do you have advice for people who are running it at the table? Because there are so many handouts. And it's like, do you print them all?
Oh, I was hoping you'd have an idea because you're
ran it in person.
You ran it in person, Alex? What did you do?
Yes, I ran it in person. I went ahead of time for each chapter. Before I started the chapter, I printed out each handout with like nice paper or whatever. Yeah. I had a manila folder for each one. I had a manila folder for that. So it was labeled Operation Alice that I just literally gave to the players.
That's cool.
Yeah, I feel like that'd be a challenge because if you're talking about like physical handouts, you don't have an easy like archive for your players to reference all of the stuff they've been given. Like,
well, actually, that's what the manila envelope was for.
Right.
I let them keep that, and they put all their handouts in there.
I think that's
I'm so jealous of in-person games because you get to actually have a bulletin board to put those up and draw the threads.
I would
like,
definitely
that is the
encourage
souvenir.
people. Yeah, if you're doing a physical game, like encourage them to do the bulletin board and the red string.
And then I was also creative with the handouts. You know, the one where you open up the note and there's a note inside it. I made that.
Awesome.
Nice. Very nice.
So yeah, just have an idea of what you might need if you are running in person.
Yeah, if you're running online too, I would suggest just a separate channel. If you're using Discord, just make a handouts channel, because then that can be all your pictures and everything. It's a little easier to search for than instead of having to go through all this text.
Yeah, this is again, hi, Type A, nice to meet you. I strongly recommend making a full separate server. That way you can have dedicated channels for chatting, scheduling, and then handouts, NPCs, and other things like in-game communications if you want to have them text back and forth and to increase that verisimilitude. Just because there are so many handouts and NPCs, I think that having those two channels at minimum is going to be very helpful to organize things for your players.
I think if you're a person that runs it in person, and then I'm thinking about like how I would want to do it, if I could bring like a laptop or something that could connect to a TV via like HDMI cable to just show NPC portraits, because like that, there's so many. I don't know that I'd want to like print out everything like that, especially when they don't necessarily need those
have
portraits,
to ask your players to crime scene sketch each of the characters.
Yeah, I did printouts in like a Polaroid form.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's really fun.
Neat.
That is really cool. Yeah, those are the kinds of props I like to see. I'm a physical prop person generically. So like an actual recorder with Henry Samagina's like recordings and things like that. That's fun.
What would be the wildest prop to make from this?
Like some fucking marionettes or like a clown mask or some shit.
Oh, that would be so cool to have a marionette.
For Encounter Group, I actually bought everyone robes and
awesome. I love it.
Yeah, that's really neat. Yes, Encounter Group, the meeting of people that love to drop clues to the campaign in case you missed them.
Also, it's just creepy as fuck if everyone's dressed up as
Yeah. I do think doing things digitally does help. Like if you can record it, it's good. It's good, especially if you have any gaps. Like it's good for that reference for people to go back and look and listen to what they've done before.
Yeah, I've had a lot of luck too recording. I find that very helpful because I like to, due to the timeness of it, right, is I'll have players that say something in one session and I'll want to get it word for word into the script that they find next session. So they can go in and go like, wait, that's exactly what we just said in here.
Players hate
someone's
that too.
Watching us. Yeah.
Those are some of the very fun handouts to make. It's like it's an exact verbatim conversation and players are like, no. And
then I like to add like there's someone behind the door right next to them that they didn't see that's listening. And it's in the script, but they never noticed it. And that can be a really fun like, what the hell is going on in this place? There's something wrong.
Yeah, in my version of the script, it ended with Roger quietly closes the door.
I think also, Lex, I know it, unfortunately we just didn't notice, but I think that this is something fun too, is when you have players you're running a digital game and you have players using like a digital shared document to record notes. Is like you as the GM can go in and go fuck with those notes.
I did. This is the one campaign that I think GMs can have permission to gaslight your players because that is part of the horror. I guess it's a hidden beating. We already said it was in the beating heart section, where GMs can adjust the notes. I've heard a tale of some GMs, if they're playing on a VTT, they will change the portraits for each agent slowly over time. Like they'll add a yellowish hue to the player character portraits. And like there's a lot of fun things that you can do that it's just really, you can get as much or as little out of this as you're really interested in. Kind of to Nathan's point too, like even if you aren't planning on publishing the recordings of your sessions, if you're running an online game, especially over Zoom or some other medium that's easy to record from, it's really helpful to do that and then share those links with your players so that if you have extended gaps and they're very interested, they can re-listen to it and be ready to hit the ground running at the next session. That way it's not just the GM going, okay, and last time, because it gets tiring.
And that's a good one. The reason I think to talk about it in that session -1 is just bring it up early. Make sure everybody's comfortable with it and gauge their familiarity. But it's pretty easy to get things up on YouTube anymore, and you don't have to make them available to the world.
Yeah, you can make it unlisted and then just share that link on Discord or whatever medium you're using.
Right.
But it sounds like we have now transitioned from session -1 to a formal session 0. So what advice would you give for GMs who are looking to actually host and run an effective session 0 to prepare their players for this campaign and vice versa?
I think you need to take into account, like, is this the right thing for my players? Reading this, I was immediately like, this is not going to be something for my home group who likes Pulp Cthulhu and being big damn heroes. And I'm like, they would absolutely hate this. They'd be miserable with all the surreal horror and things don't make sense. And like, if your players don't like delving and deep investigation and things like that, and that's fine, right? You're just like, well, this isn't for this group. Maybe I can do it for a different group instead. So just keeping in mind, like, not letting the ego of I have this amazing story to tell get in the way of, like, are people going to enjoy playing this in the first place?
Yeah.
Also, can your group meet regularly?
Oh,
Even the idea of, like, what I would almost do is even consider when to start it. Like, I wouldn't start this in like October, because then you just like hit holidays all the way to the end of the year, and it's like you're gonna have a lot of gaps, right? Like, I'd start this in like January or February.
some of us are dumb enough to do that.
Yeah.
Speaking as someone that literally is having that going on. Yeah, I would also suggest too, this campaign works really well with any number of players because you don't really need a lot of people to investigate. So in terms of scheduling, I'd suggest keeping it to a lower number. I'm running it right now for 2, and I think that's great. 5 was a little much, honestly. And
as someone currently running 5 is a lot, because each of those agents is going to be going in their own directions. You're going to be shifting spotlight. That we should honestly have a discussion about the exponential increase in playtime depending on group size, because honestly I feel like 3 is my preferred size for Delta Green scenarios.
3 or 4 for me.
4, like 4 is your rock solid. 5 is honestly a little bit too much, and like I'm taking a long time to get through night floors, and it's not like they're wasting a bunch of time. It's just it's hard to keep that momentum going when there's more wheels on the car.
You gotta split the spotlight percentage.
Yeah, exactly.
For
10
sure.
divided by 5 versus 10 divided by 4.
It makes sense to me too. It's like you can use this as the traditional Delta Green cell structure of 3 people, and it works pretty well, I would think.
And also, again, the campaign isn't super dangerous, and like if they die, they die. But you're not going to really feel like you're short on firepower, because if there is a combat, chances are you need to get the fuck out of there more than you need to stand your ground and fight.
In fact, there are specific things where if you stand your place and fight, the campaign just kind of goes, okay, you want to run now? You want to just, okay, let's wait a second. Okay, nothing's happened really good for you, so do you want to run?
Also, going back to a point that Holly made, I strongly recommend setting up a pre-scheduled time that everyone can commit to well in advance. Our first campaign took over a year to run, but honestly, if we managed to meet every week or every other week, it should have just been a few months. But we had multiple 1 to 2 month breaks just due to player scheduling difficulties, and it's an inertia killer.
It truly is.
And like with my second group, I just said, like, everyone, we are going to pick one time, and like I want you to clear your calendars, like clear this day for these times for the next year. We plan to start around January again. It's now November when we are recording this episode, and we have not met for over a month again, because the fall is just a killer in terms of availabilities and things. So like we may not get to play but 1 or 2 more times until the end of 2025. So just something to really keep in mind.
Well, here's a question. How long do you expect this campaign to last? Ideally.
It's so dependent on GM, because Lex, I know you really give people a lot of time to explore and stuff. So like you were saying, night floors, yours is taking quite a while.
I'm on session 10 of Night Floors.
Yeah.
And they're going at it. And it's just, it depends on the GM. I am a bit slower than usual because I like to amp up that tension. And it also is just going to depend on your players. You can have players that just immediately go, fuck this, burn down the building, speed run Night Floors in 2 sessions. Like, that is a thing. But, this is a hard campaign to predict for that.
Yeah, I think I usually estimate with 2 hour sessions. I want to say 14 to 16 sessions. Um, but with that, the front load of the first two scenarios is insane. Like Night Floors is a fourth, Volume of Secret Faces, and then into a map made of skin. It's probably even more than half of it. And once you get to chapter 4, two
One
sessions,
sessions, two
maybe three. Yeah,
sessions. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
get it done, keep it moving, hit the masquerade, and be out. We'll talk about why I skip most of the war zone later. But yeah, I agree. Is you you got to keep it moving because this is a campaign that's so easy to stagnate on too.
For me, it took me about 16 sessions, uh, 4 months actual time.
Yeah.
From more session zero stuff, you definitely have to gauge player expectations, gauge their experience.
Yeah.
So I would say be ready to take down notes of what the players want to see in this upcoming campaign. Ask them like, "Hey, what are you interested in? What do you want me to focus on?" Also, useful information for you is to ask what they know already about the King in Yellow, right? Ask them that.
Ah.
So have they seen the yellow sign, right? What do they know of the play?
In terms of my session zero, I hosted it not long after we interviewed Fiona from the What Am I Rolling and numerous other podcasts. And I really liked what we discussed in terms of the cats and lines and veils documents.
Yeah.
So I created a CATS document for my session zero, which stands for content, aim, tone, and safety. In terms of content, I very much labeled like these are some of the prevalent themes of the campaign. Aims, really helpful to specify this is not a combat focused campaign.
Yeah.
This is about that investigative element, these personal horrors and immersion. And in terms of tone, really emphasizing the tone and themes of surreal horror, asking if all of the players are very interested in exploring this, and politely requesting them to not poke holes in it. Surreal horror in particular is so easy just to poke with a balloon and be like, that's dumb. And it immediately lets the air out of it. That it really depends on everyone having that kind of buy-in and complementing that suspense. And so being sure, again, that this is another way to tell that it's right for your players. And then last, but certainly not least in terms of safety, I tend to mention like these are some of the content and trigger warnings that are baked into this campaign, something as a default. It would be kind of hard to run this without child death because that's such an integral element of Ace's history and what makes him such a vilified character. So just saying like there's needles, there's masks, there's marionettes, there's child death, there's drowning, and just some other things that unless players have a very strong aversion to it, then that's something to just be aware of if this may not be right for you. Then from there, in terms of lines and veils, I made this as a Google Doc and then told the players that this document is editable and they can go into this doc over the next few days and write in any lines or veils that they may have to do so anonymously. That way, no one needs to feel self-conscious or like they can't voice it up in person. And then just carrying that forward for the rest of the campaign. And if we touch on stuff, they can always edit it later.
Yeah, I completely agree with the safety tools. That's important to do early. And like you said, like the child death, it's baked in there, but it entirely depends on the GM to be like, do you really got to see all of the stuff? Or can you just make it clear, like, this is what he was doing? We're not going to see all Lewis's pictures of the drowning room. Like, you're not going to interact necessarily with these. You may just hear about it.
Right. And then assuming everyone is on board, at least thus far, with your session zero, and you start trying to work with your players to try and get character details and information, this is a really valuable time for you, not only to stoke players' interest, but also try to feed into certain ideas that you can already predict will have really high contextual relevance in certain parts of the campaign. Something that I did in my session zero that has worked pretty well is I just kind of asked players off the bat, if they can send me their sheets and send me their backgrounds, and I would make some track changes, recommendations, and alterations to certain details about their characters, like their birthdays or certain backstory elements that I am doing to increase their immersion. Beth is not going to listen to this episode for a long time, so her character is a nun who's starting at a convent in New York City, and her supervisor is Sister Esther Samogina.
Ooh.
And so, yeah, she gets to interact with Esther for a long time before she's going to run into her at the Dorchester. So trying to seed a lot of weird recurring elements over time.
Do the nuns mention every time, like, you know, her last name's a demon name, right? Because, like, if anybody's gonna know, it's
they
the
know
nuns.
they know about the demons at this point, but she hasn't pieced together that, like, oh yeah, Samogina, ain't that just a thing?
Yeah. Huh.
Also, on this note, too, I really recommend asking your players not only to give a little write-up about their agents, but also their bonds, the relationships that they have with them, maybe even a little bit of history, just a couple of paragraphs, not only so that I know how to role-play them, because I involve bonds heavily in this campaign, but also it's a way that you can seed more of those details for how they're likely going to get pulled in, or are they already someone who is involved with the play?
Yeah.
100% agree. Because, like, right, if you want to give this feeling that everything is connected, you're going to have a lot of legwork to do. You're going to do a lot of planning ahead of time.
Yeah, and I like to get an idea of what their, like, key bond is at that point too, where it's like, okay, is your key bond your kid, your wife, your brother? Like, give me the main one that I can default to for scenes, because with, you know, 3 bonds that everybody gets, it can get a little spaced out if you're not careful. So it's kind of nice to have like a default one to hammer.
Oh, also on that note too, because of a kind of rough experience that I had with Holly's campaign of it, because bonds are really important in this campaign, and it's just a lot for GMs to handle, because, you know, each player is going to have X number of bonds. I would strongly recommend capping the number of bonds various PCs can have to 3. I don't care if an occupation says 4 or 5 bonds. That is too much to remember. One of my players was a criminal who had 5 bonds. And I'm just like, dude, I don't know who the fuck you're even talking about at this point. I would say cap it at 3 and then give those characters like a skill bump for the bonds that you took off to try to compensate.
Yeah, divide the total amount of points.
Yeah, exactly.
3. Yeah.
Your 2 bonds, Elmer and Juliet Lizette. Yeah, we're playing Triangle Agency right now, and one of the fun things that does is it has the bonds essentially be played by the other players.
Yeah, I like that.
So that could be a lot of
offloads that energy that you have to spend onto other players.
That was something that I tried an experiment with during our playthrough of The Gap, and I think that you need to cultivate the right experience and expectations for players at the table.
And it still lets you, like, we played with Xander, and he had Beth say something to me, right? Like, he must have told her to say a specific, like, King in Yellow phrase. And I found that very effective, of Beth just out of the blue as her character saying something and being like, wait, what? Wait, hold up. Why did you just say it? Like, what are you telling me right now? I don't want to hear that. I'd also say it's nice to have somebody with art skills. A lot of this campaign's like with artists, and you kind of get the most mileage if your characters can do art.
I think that, and Lex encouraged this in my group, by just giving us free like 20 points.
Yeah, I think I gave y'all like 20 or 30%. Like, just pick
that.
something. You have a hobby.
Yeah, and then it's like your players aren't feeling like, oh, what do I have to take away something? You're just like, give it to them. Like, here,
then
30,
someone
30%.
takes, like, I think Dan took whittling, and I'm just like, bro, you carved a yellow sign. I got nothing on this one. But.
Ooh, that could be fun though, of just having like all these little carved figurines of all the residents and the things. Yeah.
Oh no,
Nice.
I hate it.
Do you guys ask questions to seed things later? Like, for example, when I ran with Into the Darkness, that was a little weird because they'd already done Night Floors before. So I had to ask very specific questions about, like, okay, what do you think happened during this run? And then what's the biggest secret you want to hide? What's the biggest, regret you have or something? Like, what would you change in the world? Are there anything you can think of that you would put in session 0 that you can then pay off later?
Yes. There were a few questions that I asked just to help get the ball rolling as a little homework for agents. Let's see. One of them was asking, what is a recurring dream that they have?
Nice.
What is a secret that their other agents do not know? What is a secret that your character does not know about themselves?
Ooh.
And so trying to really let the player feel like they are seeding in mysterious things that their character can encounter over time in the campaign.
So Mr. Wild is doing his research at the start, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. What part of your reputation do you need repaired?
Yeah. Honestly, that's a good one of if you can say, like, what's an opportunity that your character missed out on? Because I like Mr. Wild having a carrot and a stick, right? Of, sure, I can, like, put out your reputation and completely ruin you, or you can get that cushy job you always wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That is one thing I'll note is the King in Yellow is not only like it is like something that tries to draw people in. If everything is negative, it's difficult to want to stay with the King in Yellow, right? It's all like, oh, this is terrible. But once you start to get there and go like, well, maybe here my family can be safe. Maybe here, we never lost our kid to a drowning. All of the sudden, it starts to get more enticing when you hit Act 4 and you're in Carcosa to go like, well, maybe we can make a life here and just
Welcome
be
home.
trapped here forever. Exactly.
So after you get your character sheets after that session 0, I really recommend making a table of all those important stats, that good stuff like health, sanity, important bonds, their occupation, what you want to focus on, and of course dex order. And then as you go into each chapter, add the NPC's stats if there is like some kind of scuffle or whatever. If you predict that there is going to be a combat, just so you can have that ready.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was after our, what was it, like the Good GM Habits episode when you talked about having that table. I made a big Google Doc spreadsheet that has drag and drop entries. So I have the agents are always there, and then there's drop down menus that have all of the NPCs that I entered their key stats. That way, if a combat or something's coming up, I can drop down to Lewis Post and then slide right into combat without having to ask about dex order. This also is really a good way to emphasize horror because, like, no, this is just happening. You done pissed him off and he is coming at you with a knife.
Oh, you're faster. It's your turn right now. What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. I guess I'm killing an artist again.
That's so cool, Lex. You got to show me how to do that little drop down trick.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things that I see people have done is attach figures to agents' lives that will come up later. Like Asa Darabandi is an example. I had him be a pivotal part of, I believe, Nell's character's life in Into the Darkness, right? As he started to appear there, like the disappearance of her, someone from her family. I think Dr. Friend would be super fun to bring in earlier, Dr. Dallin. I think seeding backstory like that will pay off big when they get to the second part, like you did with Samagina, of then going, oh, it's 20 years later, and somehow I ran across this person again, and they're doing something completely different and weird. That's that kind of like uncanny, you shouldn't be here feeling.
Yeah. One of my agents with 0 prompting said, I want to be an architect. And I was just like, oh, dog, this is going to be good.
Perfect.
But so like he has the same birthday as Asa Darabandi.
Awesome.
I nudged his background a little bit. It's like, you went to the Chicago School of Architecture, as like also going to Darabandi's alma mater and being
Love it.
kind of just happened to cross paths without realizing it. And now he's getting a lot of unsettling revelations. You don't have to tie characters into all of your player characters' lives so far. It's something it's kind of fun to drag and drop as needed, or sometimes it can happen on happy accident. I didn't realize that I was giving one of my PCs lots of handouts related to Ian DeCraig until he just asked me, it's like, why do I keep getting stuff about this DeCraig guy? And it's just like, oh, you're going to be tied to him from now on. You're getting dreams about a weird red castle door in the middle of your house.
Yeah. If you're gonna tie in, one of these characters into the PC's backstory, I would just do it for all of them, just so it's equal, so no one feels left out.
Yeah, always giving someone a little something special to be able to key into. So, like, you'll get more or less inspiration at baseline, but I think that it is a good goal is like you're going to give someone a unique tie into the deeper things of it.
And you can get creative too, right? I made one of my PC's fathers one of the Static Protocol people who died.
Nice.
So, but they're like still there.
Yeah.
It's like, what's going on?
In my first run, Billy, his backstory was literally the pilot of Supernatural. And so I was just like, all right, cool. This is what we got. We're going to roll with it. So yeah, his dad was in Delta Green and was in Static Protocol.
Yeah.
And then he gets looped into Static as kind of like fulfilling that family heritage type thing.
And don't be afraid to just make things like a little non-linear too, because like even though the person's father died in Static Protocol in like 1980, they're still alive and raising their kid in the 2000s, which is like what?
Right. It's all a dream. That's
yeah. Or like they're just an idea. They're a tulpa.
Yeah, right.
Raised by you're like the daughter of a tulpa. That's a crazy idea to think about. That it's like makes your players' minds go, huh? What?
Yeah, you get that cool revelation, right? You get to that point and you go, oh no, this person was that the whole time. I think seeding the same character throughout. I had mentioned one of these. The players knew that this person was the waiter at the restaurant, the bouncer at the club, their dog walker. It was all the same person. It's all Elmer, but their characters all know that. Like they all interacted with this guy, but none of them knew. Like, why would you talk about this waiter?
This side character in your lives.
Exactly. You meet him and everyone goes, oh, you motherfucker at the brothel bin. It was a fun kind of scene that they got to have, even though they as players all knew, like, okay, something's up. This guy keeps showing up.
I like the idea if you have a player that like comes from a very wealthy background, that they're like ties to the Lundin fortune and all of that. Like you know, it doesn't have to be direct, but like a niece or a nephew or great niece, something like that.
I sunk all my money in this mall and it's not going anywhere.
Also, as a final note for session zeros, kind of while we're here, I highly recommend advocating for your players to not only take copious notes because they're going to need it, but to have a shared group notes document, because different players are going to get attached to different things, and just letting each player do things in isolation, things will feel more disjointed. And it just really helps to have that shared notes doc to keep everyone on a similar page. Additionally, if you are running this online, a bulletin board is almost mandatory for this campaign, because that visual representation is so helpful to zoom out and see these bigger picture connections. We used Padlet in my first run, and it was fine. My group is currently using Canva, and I think that it's working a little bit better. It's a little more user-friendly, but I recommend finding some kind of software to share that with the group.
I assume you go in at some point and rearrange all the string to make the yellow sign in the connections.
Well, I'm going
everything.
to now. I kind of have to.
Incredible.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't overemphasize that taking notes is going to be the most, like, players can help remember things. If they have gaps, it's helpful. But if somebody drops a character and they forget that Roger Caroon exists because he's barely there, okay, it's fine.
Don't worry about
Your
it.
campaign will survive.
Yeah. That raises a really good point, Nathan. In terms of this
Yay.
campaign, how do we want to plan on dealing with character death and replacement, since this is a kind of unique campaign where death may not be the end? I personally love the suggestion for encounter group meetings to be the basis of new character introductions. It's this random Joe that someone creates that suddenly, like, their brain is getting flooded with memories of a life that isn't theirs. And then this random person just shows up. Hey guys, what are we doing? Are we going to find Abigail? It's like, who the fuck is this guy? I've known you for years.
Yeah, it's almost like they had someone kicked like mentally out of the dreamlands into a body that it now inhabits.
Anyways,
that
next
isn't their
topic.
own. It's almost like that exact thing that happens.
Whoa.
Whoa.
On a serious note, I think the idea of PC replacement really does depend on what point you are in this campaign. So each chapter should have a different entry point.
Yeah.
Right? Because if they die early on in Night Floors, like somehow, I would just give them a new character.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that
agreed.
if they die in Night Floors, they're probably going to die in the floors.
Yep.
They can just stay dead. Like at that point,
Mhm.
it should not be getting
And that's a new
dangerous
NPC.
until the ending. Yeah, like give them an NPC for a hot minute, and then they can make a new character over the gap to get.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
you get a new NPC once they die for the future.
I think at some point you kind of have to give your NPCs like the plot armor of it all, or not your NPCs, your PCs kind of need like the plot
Yeah.
armor to push through to the end, or
Mhm.
like the, oh, you didn't really die, you're back here again, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there's another midway point where like you can let a character die and bring in a PC and maybe someone who is a little bit familiar. Like, I think I wrote that maybe someone who's the last surviving member from a different cell that like
Yeah.
it could be King in Yellow related. You could even run like an interlude of like Unremembered or another King in Yellow-esque scenario for that one player in which like their entire team is killed except for them, and then they bring in that knowledge into this. But it's at a certain point, right, where you
Yeah.
want someone who has that knowledge, or you need a PC that has that knowledge, so you're not doing the, no, I swear it's all real, it's marionettes all the way down, and they're like, okay, sure, guy, whatever you say.
I suspect that was like the implicit intent for V-Cell, because they have such a role that is characterized by its emptiness in the actual writing of the book, that it's like, oh no, they did shit and things happen and they're in the Dorchester somewhere. So just if you need a replacement character, they can be from V-Cell and then continue on.
Yeah, that's kind of the tail end too of where I would probably go for a replacement character, because once you're out of the Dorchester house, it's such like you don't really have a clean new character that's interesting. Like everything's already kind of tied together, and I just think when you hit 3 and 4, you're going to have such a hard time making them impactful, unless maybe you bring in a bond of the character, right? Like it could be, because this doesn't have to be Delta Green, you could have the spouse of the dead agent be the replacement, and most of your plot threads probably survive-ish then.
So in your mind, is it like chapters 3 and 4 or where you kind of need that plot armory, like, or figure out a way to not kill your, or they die but they don't die?
I think 3 and 4 as written, 4 is so lethal, but I usually don't run it that lethal. Usually the most danger they could come into is that they choose to stay, because I find that to be kind of the interesting side of the Carcosa, right? Is like, it's not that it's trying to kill you, it is trying to consume you and keep you. But yeah, that's pretty much, like, I've seen people work it out where they die in the Dorchester and they bring in a new character. Greenbox Gaming did that, and that's enough time where you can have them be interesting and tied in. I just don't see it after the Brothel Bin, or probably even in the Brothel Bin.
The
is tough.
Dorchester
Yeah,
or the Brothel Bin?
I think the Dorchester's the last time, like,
Okay.
once they escape
Safety
at
cutoff.
that, at that point, like, is it do they have enough time to be interesting?
And that's what I was going to say. Like it should be a question of player investment. Like, is there enough opportunity to have a compelling and interesting character that the player is interested in continuing to role play down it? I really think that once they get out of the Dorchester, you can have some weirdness in maps, but then once they get to the Brothel Bin, they're locked in. If you die, timey-wimey repeater shit happens, and things are just going to get worse for you, and like come up with some kind of penalties for character death in those times. But yeah, I do not see how or why a GM would kill a PC and have them be replaced in the final act. Like, they are in it to win it. Give your player a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, and speaking of investment too, like if I'm in a campaign and I know I'm going to be doing this for months, nothing would kill my investment more than if I die in the first chapter and then I'm handed an existing PC to play, like Thomas Wright or Michael Whitwer. Like, don't I personally, like, that would be like, okay, great, I didn't get to pick this character at all, but now I'm playing them for the next year.
Yeah,
that's not exciting to me. Just let them create a new character, rope them in how you want.
Yeah, I think that, like, we discussed in that hypothetical, if Lewis happens to crit with the knife and just slash one of these PC's throats, Thomas Wright knows first aid and can, like, barge in. You can give them that pre-gen for kind of, like, enough to tie up those loose ends in night floors. And then at the gap, you get a chance to make a new PC. But yeah, I find that the book seems to repeatedly insist on having several replacement pre-gens, like Detective Guiradanda, Whitwer, Wright, and maybe some others that I'm forgetting. And I don't see it for a large campaign that should have a lot of personal investment.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I think the alternative of making your own PC and having that rich backstory is so much better than having a pre-written NPC. It makes it more personal if you have a PC that you add to and you build the world with.
Concur.
Right, because as the GM, you're gonna bring them into that same level of involvement with the campaign. If you were like really struggling and being like, I just want to have like Thomas Wright, he's going to be invested, he has a reason to keep going, I guess I can see it. But hopefully your players, if they're going to enjoy this campaign, are self-driven enough to make another character that will care.
And I think in the unlikely, at least in my opinion, the unlikely event you have a TPK in the night floors or in the Dorchester, it's easy enough to shift to a whole different cell and say, well, you're investigating what happened to C cell, B cell, whatever. But that feels kind of unlikely,
Yeah, it's interesting it could be interesting to be V cell, which is Whitwer's crew, of these doomed agents being like another version of them. But at that point, like, you're kind of just making new characters anyways.
And last but not least, as you are a GM who is going to be prepping to run this campaign, the book is already full of tons of inspiration. Are there any other references or resources that you would recommend for interested folks to try to read or watch, etc., to kind of give them some more ideas for this campaign?
Be like me. Be a lazy ass GM that doesn't read any reference material and just goes by the book.
Yeah, there's something to that, because a lot of these, like, I yammered on about the sense of the sleight of hand man, right? I think that's a fun read. Is it necessary? No. Does it get a fun Dreamland vibe? Sure. But, like, yeah, I guess that would be my reference material if you want to kind of see where the evolution of this came from. But unnecessary. I'll throw out another one suggestion, which we've talked about before, is Where Black Stars Rise, a graphic novel. And it does a really good job of both having the world be giving clues to the characters that they're not even seeing, which I think ties in really well with King and Yellow stuff. Is like, there will be posters that say, like, stop, don't go around the corner, that of course the person going doesn't see or doesn't pay attention to. That's perfect vibes for this.
I would recommend, none of this reference material is required, but it will spark ideas for additional scares that you want to generate. for the campaign, but I recommend Thomas Ligotti's Crampton. It's actually a super cool prototype X-Files episode script that they just published. Um, and it's really cool. It's really surreal. Speaking of surreal, any David Lynch film like Mulholland
Yeah.
Drive, fantastic. Blue Velvet, get those creepy vibes, those dreamlike atmospheres that
Oh,
he
you
does
could
so well.
just you can have them talk about how they had a dream about the guy behind the
Oh
dumpster
yeah,
and then
of
spend
course.
all that time walking out there and you're like, there better not be a guy behind that damn dumpster.
It's Thomas Manuel.
And this is where I get to say, well, actually, there is some required reading that can help this campaign. It can be very helpful to read the original Robert Chambers stories. Not
Yeah.
all of them necessarily, but I would highly recommend reading through The Repairer of Reputations, as it has a lot of NPCs that show up in this, and like it's featured very heavily in this campaign. The Mask is referenced by the little gold animals that one of the nurses will vomit up, and it can have some fun themes to bring up for your PCs. The yellow sign is fine. It's not really needed for this. The Demoiselle d'Ise and Court of the Dragon are also, they have King in Yellow references, but not really required. I mostly recommend Repairer of Reputations. You can get all of these online through Project Gutenberg for free, or if you are a weirdo like me who likes to have physical copies of media, a friend of the podcast, David Gassaway, highly recommended the Dover Publications collection from 1970. That was one of the last curated collections of Robert Chambers's stories before they went into public domain and everyone just copy paste them for free. So a lot of iterations of the King in Yellow stories will have typos and just junk in them. And this was one of the last collections that was guaranteed to not have any of that. Arc Dream also came out with an annotated version that I have but have not read. So that may also be good.
Yeah, it's really nice.
John Scott Tynes, he wrote, I believe, 3 books in this universe that are very heavily referenced for this campaign.
Yeah.
Ambrose, Broadlebin, and then Saucitris. So
yeah, they can be hard to find.
can.
I think that someone had mentioned that they'll be coming a little more
into a collected version, yes.
Yeah, they're going to be more easily accessible soon. My
Any
personal
day
thing,
now.
Ambrose is an interesting dreamy tale that can have some nice inspiration for that Carcosa kind of around the castle setting. I did not like Broadlebin one bit.
It was a little too edgy for
It
you.
was extremely 3 edgy 5 me. I could not finish it. I've not read Sesotris.
Is it a 90s book? I feel like that's like the
I don't know.
90s
It-
vibe.
I don't know. Content warning. There's like, I think there's
Very heavily features like
yeah, a lot of
aggressive, homophobic, heroin addict, racism,
Yeah, of course.
animal
little
death.
essay.
Yeah, it's
Not good.
not for me.
Oh, hey, speaking of books with terrible characters in them, House of Leaves, I think, is probably the classic these days that people talk about. I will say, personally, House of Leaves, it understood the assignment, as they say. It matches the vibe, and I think it covers the bases of what it needs to do. Maybe, read content warnings if it's for you, because there's definitely some characters in there that you end up kind of rolling your eyes and be like, all right, we get it. You're edgy. You're off in your own world. It kind of just overstayed its welcome in my particular library.
At this point, we've been recording for over 3 hours, so I will not subject the others to my very long rant about how overrated I think this book is. But I will say, for folks that are interested in reading it, this can have some really great inspiration for the night floors and maybe some elements of the Dorchester in terms of the Navidson house and the weird shit with the 5.5 minute hallway or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah.
But I would say just read the sections that pertain to the Navidson record. Don't read the red text, the gross sexual shaggy dog tail guy. It's unnecessary and doesn't really add anything.
Yeah.
The Navidson record parts will get you that cool, surreal inspiration that you need with minimal grossness.
Yeah, it ends up just being like okay, we get it. There's a guy that is unreliable telling you this story.
about
It
all of these
just-
wild sexual
oh,
encounters
boy.
in sports cars, and it's
that
like,
didn't happen.
yeah, I eventually DNF'd it because I got so tired of it. Almost
Yeah.
everyone that I have talked with who has actually finished the book has said they only finished it because they started skipping over that guy's
Yep.
sections because it's just abrasive.
Which I think is kind of the point too. Like, I understand the form it's going for, but at any rate, this isn't David behavior. What are we doing? I also suggest Ian J. Colbert's King in Yellow graphic novel. It adapts a lot of the stories you talked about, Lex, in a pretty classy little graphic novel style. I like his stuff, and it's pretty faithful to the original. That said, definitely read the original, because there's bits in there like The Prophet's Paradise that is a collection of poetry that is not exactly related to the story, but it's a quick read, and I think vibe wise is so useful to keep for especially part 4 of the campaign, of that kind of sense of melancholy and lost opportunity and wistfulness that Carcosa has.
I think that something fun to reference as well is Archive 81, both the podcast
Ooh,
and the
yeah.
Netflix show, that are, at least part of it is heavily inspired by Night Floors.
Yeah, the
Yes.
first half of it was really heavily inspired by Night Floors and hits that vibe super well. If you want like some visual elements to reference, I really enjoyed the first half of Archive 81.
Also, I would just say, we'll rep it again, that Impossible Landscapes, there is a handler-centric
Yeah.
Discord channel where people share their handouts and discuss ways to run. And also on our Discord channel, there are many people that have run Impossible Landscapes on our Discord, and we have a dedicated channel to discuss how to do it and GM advice.
And if there's one thing we know about Impossible Landscapes handlers, is that they won't shut up about Impossible Landscapes handling.
Truly, if you ask 3 handlers about IL advice, you're going to get 5 different opinions. But as a final reference, it's a very niche one. If you want to have your agents get possessed by demons at some point, the novella Come Closer by Sarah Gran is a really interesting take on possession that can be a good way to kind of seed those events through the long term with like involuntary actions, emails they don't remember having sent, and that allows your players to come to the creeping realization that they are possessed.
You got that demon in you.
I got that dog in me. And by dog, I
mean
mean
Satan.
This brings our prologue discussion for Impossible Landscapes to a close. Hopefully, by this point, you're feeling more prepared to create your world, get your players involved, and ready to start actually running Impossible Landscapes. We hope you'll join us next time as we discuss how to run the night floors and associated sections as the agents begin their plunge into the abyss. Be sure to check out the show notes of this episode for links to purchase a copy of this campaign for yourself, Bud's RPG review overview of the campaign, other RPG resources we mentioned, as well as invites to our lab's Discord server to discuss this campaign and other reanimations, as well as the IL Handlers Discord server. We also post these episodes and resources to our Patreon that's free to follow, or if you like, you could make a charitable donation to help us stock more library copies of Leroy and Jean at the H. West Memorial Mortuary and Laboratories. We'd also like to give a shout out and thanks to our Patreon interns, Beth, Xander, Sawyer, Scott, Chance, Jan, Born to Be Wrong, and JS. Thank you so much for supporting us. And thank you for listening to RPG Reanimators,
Where your games can die.
Or live.
In the play.
If you open a door just right, I mean if you really know how to open a door, there's always another door on the other side. I didn't buy it at first, but after he showed me, wow.